committee last year, and we'd just like to recognize that. Moment of silence, please. Okay, thank you. This is the Infrastructure Oversight Committee. Today is May 10th. We had a full committee, but Mr. Emerald was called for an emergency and had to leave. Membership update. We have Lawrence Holdsworth here. He's not a sworn-in member yet, but he is here to partake in the festivities, if you will. He just doesn't have a vote at this time. Maury, you want to go ahead and push minutes, please?
Yeah, I would like to submit minutes from the last meeting on February 8th, 2023.
Anybody want to move?
And I will move them if I don't have any.
I'll move that they be.
Okay, you move.
Second by Bob.
Okay.
Discussion on it? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any against? Okay, that's unanimous. Okay, upcoming meeting dates. I know some people are doing some things in July and August. We want to try to squeeze one in before everybody hits the road. Does June 22nd work for next meeting for everybody? That's a Thursday. Different day because everybody has stuff to do.
And will you put it into this room to be reserved for that night?
Bob, you're available too?
Yep.
Okay. Manny, you're available? All right, so 6:22, 6:30 again work for you? Everybody?
Is that,
6:30 work?
Bob, we moved it from 6 to 6:30 for Bob's availability. Huh?
It's fine with me, but Thursday's another problem.
So you want to leave 6:30?
Not a problem. You want to leave it at 6:30? Does everybody like 6:30 better than 6?
Doesn't matter.
Okay, let's
Okay.
do 6:30.
So the next meeting will be June 22nd, 6:30 p.m. here. 6:32, 6:30. Okay, Roger is running a little late. Bob, when you get caught up, can you give us an update on the Kleinfelder design?
You're gonna have to start over. There's no microphones on.
None of them are working?
I don't
even
know
have
who touched them. Not getting anything.
All right, well, we haven't got anything overly excited anyway, so. As long as it's working for the presentation.
Gonna do the Pledge of Allegiance over?
Yeah, we did.
I'm only kidding you.
And the meeting date, is there anything super exciting? Val, let me know when we're good. Good now?
I want to do the Bob thing again.
Okay. Can you hear us?
You wanna do the
Go
Bob
ahead.
thing?
Yeah, we're good. We'll be good. Good. Mr. Dale, go ahead.
All right, the design is essentially all done. And when I say the design, there are three contracts. The first contract is western end where we connect into Fall River and it runs to 88. And then there are two others, each one ending in a pumping station location. So the next step would be going from 88 to Bread and Cheese Brook. So all of this is just to put the spine of a future system together. So this is only water and sewer in Route 6. And where there currently is water in Route 6. Where it ends, when we do a sewer project, we extend the water in Route 6 at the same time. So the first phase is essentially complete. The pumping stations are designed, and the others are probably at the 95% place, where we're in the process of getting permits on the interbasin transfer, and we could file with the local conservation commission at any time. The drawings are sufficiently complete to do that. So that the design work is essentially done.
When will the final report be presented by Kleinfelder to the town?
Well, there's a set of contract documents. When it finally has all the permits, we could do. There is a design report. The design report has already been presented to the town before they started
Permitting.
work.
Okay, so pending permits.
So,
Okay.
you know, the only missing piece is, we're still looking for the money.
So that's the next thing on the agenda.
Okay. Want to go to that? Any other questions on that? Okay.
One question.
Go ahead.
So Bob, you said the spine, but does that includes taking it out of the Mass Highway layout, correct?
Yes, and everything, it's only the piece, it doesn't reach into the neighborhoods. And the only, but all the work that's in Route 6 brings water and sewer connections onto the abutting properties. And where a property is vacant or there's a double lot, there are two connections that come in. So once the contracts are done in Route 6, digging up Route 6 is all over. It's just then making connections into the system.
So every place that there's a street, there must be something.
There's
ready to
when
go.
When you know, if you think about the north end, once we get the other side of 88, there's all of the small streets that feed into that. And in every one of those, in every one of those locations, there is a stub left with on the sewer, both on the sewer and water side, there's a line that runs into the streets.
Only up to the Route 6 layout.
Just gets it out of the layout.
Okay, just outside. Doesn't go up 100 feet or 200 feet, okay.
Bob, so does that include the existing water main that we got up there right now?
Yep.
Can that be included, the water main itself, can that be included in contract 1 for the entire section where the water main is? One of the reasons being is part of our immense problem up there is drinking water.
Yep.
And some of this stuff that we're gonna talk with the Board of Health, I think it's kind of pertinent to make sure we can get it out of Route 6 so that we can solve some of these
Yeah,
other problems.
right now, there's no work proposed on the existing water line. That is, we're not going, but there's not a plan to go back in and tap into that and extend it onto the properties.
Well, I think we need to
know.
look into it because of, part of the problem historically is getting it out of Route 6. So if we're looking to get this,
When it was built, no, they never brought connections?
they got I looked at the as-bills from, Facebook and Thorndike, and they have T's and gates in front of the streets, but it never came out of Route 6. So like even some of the properties have T's and gates, just like the coastal healing one that was in front of us, there's T's and gates out there, but they went in and did a wet tap. They didn't even try to utilize that stuff. Some of the things that I came across, through the years, like where Kathy's restaurant is,
Yep.
the previous owner to that, he was, small business, trying to get, stay in business. He ended up retiring because it was gonna cost him too much money to get it out of Route 6 to make the tap, and then the new people that came in eventually.
Right now, that's, all the new work, everything gets out of Route 6. And the present contract is, there was no plan to go back and, I don't know who's connected or who's not connected in that.
I think we gotta look into how we get that done.
So Kleinfelder was looking at a portion of that anyway, the vacant lots they were looking to extend. The design plan shows stubs from the water line going to those properties.
One of the things we have is we have gates in front of all our streets that the town owns. The existing water main that we had wells dry up last year on them streets. We get a Board of Health with a regulation making people put D-night systems up there when the water's the problem, the drinking water. And, I know cases where they were less than 500 feet away from the main. So like some of these neighborhoods that have eminent health issues right now are not being addressed by the Board of Health's regulations. And I think, hopefully when we go over this stuff with them, we can get them to push some of these issues to solve this. But if we're gonna come up and be digging up Route 6 right now, I think that first phase should include that water main. Get it all out of Route 6.
So, only money.
Yeah.
Well,
We'll have to find out who wants it.
Well, there's other things to go for that too,
Yeah.
This is drinking water. You know, I mean,
Yeah.
there's other avenues, you know, we're looking to tie into Fall River. I mean, Fall River's got the issue with the Watuppa that they're working on right now and doing things. There's monies that can be had in that direction. I mean, they've got a big chunk of ARPA money for water and sewer too.
Yep.
So,
I think
just to be clear, are you saying that in the areas where we now have a water line going up on Route 6, we're gonna have a separate one going,
No,
tie-ins.
What, I don't know.
well, how will this new one integrate with what's there already in terms of water?
We grab a hole at the end and we extend it to 12-inch water main, extend it all the way, and all the new stuff, all the taps are made and all the lines are brought onto every property.
Okay.
Well, Jerry, one of the problems was the existing main is in the middle of Route 6.
Right, in the
All the
middle.
fire hydrants are in the middle of Route 6.
Right.
We also got an issue of you know, since this line was underused and we got residents timing the pipe and we got problems with water quality.
Right.
I mean, they're out there flushing it and they can't even flush it adequately because the hydrants are in the middle of Route 6. I mean, we don't have any hydrants on one side of Route 6. I mean, they got a fire, the fire department's gotta go out in the middle of Route 6 and tie onto this.
Most of the water that we buy from Fall River, we spill on the ground, just to keep the line
You
fresh.
got to keep it clean,
We have to keep the
Yeah.
line fresh.
yeah.
Because even though the water's there, and even though there's pressing water needs, people are not connected to the line.
And that's the reason it's stuck in the middle of Route 6 and it's
Right.
for the 80-year-old that's being forced to upgrade his cesspool right now to get that water out of Route 6 to solve his problem because the well's contaminated. Can't do it, can't afford it.
Right.
And this was 35 years ago, this line was put in there.
All right, well, let's keep digging and see what we need to do. If we need to make a list of what, I know they asked last time, so let's see what we can do. If there's people that need it, we'll come up with a plan.
Well, as far as keeping it fresh,
Yes.
we've already mentioned in the past, we may have a repeat of that down in the Lincoln Park area if we don't do something to make it circulate.
Yeah, that's what they're gonna have to work out with the new main.
And when we build it, people are gonna connect to it, or it's just,
Right.
and then it's just a pipe filled with water.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're still trying to find something down the end that'll utilize more water. Okay, let's move on to the next, the permitting with the MassWorks application and whatnot, Bob? You and Jim, you wanna talk about that, or do you wanna go on to Mr. Fernandes? Jim?
Well, Roger was gonna cover all of these things, but.
Okay, well, let's get Roger into throw Roger into the
Yeah.
fire. How we doing, Roger?
Good, guys. Sorry for being a couple of minutes late.
That's
My
okay.
apologies.
But let me just talk about where we are with the funding. We have, I think everyone knows, we made a MassWorks application last year for the first phase for the $7 million. And what we're, just to say what is the cost of all this? The cost is about to do the whole Route 6 is about $33 million. To run it and to serve sort of the immediate Northwestport district and to bring water to the Maycomber School and to really have a district where the smaller homes and the smaller lots can't really work an on-site water and wastewater solution. So to bring sewer into those neighborhoods. If we did it as a capital program, that is, we undertake it, it's 15, 20 years, you do it in sequence, that's probably in the order of $60 or $70 million. This is an undertaking, long-term capital commitment, and you build it in phases, put the spine in, and we chase as much state and federal monies as we can to help us. So we put in a $7 million loan or grant request last year, was denied. Under MassWorks, this is for economic development. So the first phase runs to 88, runs by Mid-City Steel, it runs by essentially a commercial district.
And we were denied because we don't have anyone ready to go. And the idea was, the MassWorks grant was, if you have a developer, the investment in the infrastructure is meant to have someone who would build, but for the fact that he doesn't have sewer and water. You provide the sewer and water, they build, it creates economic development. That's the idea. We applied again this year, and we probably will get denied again. We've also have filed for what used to be called an earmark, but it's direct congressional spending. That is, Congress would appropriate money for a project, and we did it again, requested that for the first phase to tie the Fall River and put that big critical piece in. That decision is likely to be September or October this year. And it's probably wrapped up into the federal budget debates and whether people cut spending and don't cut spending. And so it's all, it will be wrapped up in that. But generally there has been direct congressional funding because everybody who sits there wants to bring money home to his hometown. And we're also this summer going to apply for the state revolving fund. Those are loans, and that we will qualify for. But it's a loan, not a grant, and we're trying to craft an argument that gives us greater debt forgiveness. Right now, we have the same thing that drives the budget deficit and all the other issues that we have here is that we have sections of the town that everyone knows has significant lower than the per capita income, so they would qualify for large help. But when the town of Westport, the town of Westport is the applicant, the state said, you know, your assessed values continue to grow and grow and grow and grow. You know, you are getting to be a wealthier town. You don't need help. And it's, you know, we're trying to spin it to say, listen, you know, it's, you've got to look at where we're making the public investment and what is the economic profile of those people. We've got an older population. We've got poorer people, people that can't afford to, you know, exactly the point that Manny just made about, you know, even if we gave them sewer and water, you know, the betterment charge is crushing, you know, and you can structure, just as we do now in the real estate taxes, veterans, discounts are, and also for elderly, so we can craft those kinds of things, but essentially, it is trying to get across the DEP that you have to look at the service area profile, not the town as a whole. So we'll see if we're going to be successful with that argument. But it's a valid, absolutely accurate picture of where we're trying to serve. But we can't make it a district and say, okay, well, this is a district, because if you do that, then the district has to have the financial capabilities to pay for the sewer and water, and we need the town's full faith and credit to pull this off. So that's where we are in the funding. We continue to seek it. We are both our congressional delegation and our Senate and state rep, Mike and Paul, have been helpful. The senator has actually already got us a $1 million grant that we've been using. So we already have a kitty to work on
the construction and management. You know, this is what, in part, is paying for Roger's work on the project.
Yeah, and there's also a new position with the governor that's gonna be rural development and agriculture. And hopefully they're gonna appoint that person soon. We are not classified as, we're not set as rural yet. So we're gonna try to see if we can get our foot in the door as soon as that position is created. And it's exactly to help rural economic development and farming, which is hopefully something we could try to grab while they have some funds. All right, any other questions on that? The MassWorks and the state revolving? Okay, Roger, why don't you jump in? Please.
If you'd like, this is just basically what we're gonna be discussing right now in terms of where we are. And some of the stuff we'll touch upon is Bob's already talked about a little bit, but, with respect to the MassWorks grant, is, an expression of interest was already submitted to the state, and I know there was some discussion about what that means, but basically we get feedback from MassWorks that'll tell us this is where your grant is, your application is strong, this is maybe where you need a little bit. They didn't discourage anyone from submitting, but that's a little different. The MassWorks grant is a little different than the SRF, as you know, in part because we're gonna wanna cater the grants or the request for funding based on the best opportunity to get the kind of funding that we want. By that I mean the MassWorks grant is an economic development one, so we're gonna wanna cater the application to reflect that, where the SRF application is gonna be, we're probably gonna wanna look at an environmental benefit, because with an environmental benefit, you're gonna, in this nitrogen reduction, you could be looking at 0% interest or maybe some loan forgiveness. So it's kind of just catering the applications to give them what they want to hear to get the best deal, I guess is one way to look at it. But back to what I've got in front of you now in terms of just a general update as to where we are. Item one, the sewer pump station. This is one item that's sort of in the critical path for the project. Without getting into too much details regarding specificity, because we are talking about some potential land negotiations. We've been in contact with some property owners. We just received word that one of them came back sort of favorable. So we do think that there's a potential at that particular location. So the next step will be to, open up, continue dialogue with the property owner, and then before we invest in, come to some sort of initial agreement before we invest in things like, surveying the property, developing something that then you can present the town meeting for, whether it's an easement or a friendly taking, or however we want to approach that particular land issue. So the sewer pump station location, that continues, but again, some positive word action this past week. We got some positive word on that. The interbasin transfer work that we're doing is also sort of in the critical path. It's been challenging. We're dealing with the state agencies, DCR, and we had a video conference with them last month, an initial calculation and project summary with the intent of getting a RDI, a request for determination of insignificance, which is sort of the shortcut that we want to get this ITA sort of squared away. They push back a little bit, so there's some back and forth. And again, just a couple of weeks ago, we received some updated calculations from Kleinfelder, the consultant. We've got a meeting scheduled, I think, next week with the team to talk about those updated findings of what they're going to resubmit to the state folks to make sure we're all on the same page. But we're going to continue to push to try to find the least path of resistance without circumventing process, the state process, whatever needs to be done. We're going to try to see if we can get them to come on board and find an easier path.
Yeah, I'm surprised you got pushback because, as far as I remember, the Interbasin Transfer Act covers transfer of water of 1 million gallons a day, 1 million gallons a day.
Yep.
And this system, I remember the four-phase system that CDM envisioned back in 2004, which piped most of Northwestport, was under 1 million gallons a day. So why are state agencies
Well, it's that
being
plus-
difficult?
but they're also, it's part of the calculation, they make you look at what they call the safe yields from the water
The
sources.
state what?
Safe yields, what you can draw down from the water sources. So sort of a tupper, for example, is a water source here. So the water comes in, what can you
Okay.
draw safely down from that? So you've got to present them, and Kleinfeld is doing that with with a analysis that shows them that that's, and some of those yield amounts are prescribed, that yield will not stress that particular.
Now,
water
another
supply.
thing I remember from, because I've done this water and sewer since 2004, I'm pushing 20 years on this. And another thing that I do remember is that Fall River built a big system, and they didn't grow into it. And so they have capacity of 14 million gallons a day, but they're only using 11 million gallons a day, so they have 3 million gallons to sell. Again, you know, we're way under 1 million gallons a day. And what's the big deal?
So the wastewater is not the problem. The wastewater, they would.
The big deal is DCR thinks it's a big deal.
Yeah.
And that's the big deal. And it isn't a 1 million gallon a day threshold. It is at a 1 million gallon a day threshold is mandatory to do an environmental impact assessment for the ITA. Under a million gallons, you know, DCR thinks a quart requires an interbasin transfer. And then they would make, so you have to make an application, and then they would say, oh, a quart is insignificant. And then if it's
Okay.
100,000 gallons, is that insignificant given the size of the two reservoirs? We think it is. DCI has terrible heartburn.
You're not being very complimentary, Bob.
I don't mean to be.
All right, so we gotta keep squeezing that.
So yeah,
Okay.
it is that. I mean, it's a back and forth. It's a grind, to be perfectly honest with you.
Sorry.
But we hope we can get them to come around and not have to go through an environmental impact report process, because it's an arduous one and it's costly and it takes a lot of time. So, so again, we've got a meeting scheduled next week to discuss this before the next response to their comments, before we submit our responses to their comments and our calculations to their comments in the next couple of weeks, I would imagine. Bob, I won't talk too much about item 3. Bob talked about the congressional direct spending request that was submitted. We got a lot of help from Michael Burris in the planning office. He was great. The review takes place in July 31st. Likely to hear something in October, which for any matching funds would put us in a position where we could go to town meeting potentially the following 2024 annual town meeting. The SRF applications, the proposals for the project evaluation forms, the first step, those are going to be accepted, this upcoming July and August. We don't, one of the things that, we talked to Jim about and talked to the committee about is, I think I believe in being very proactive. So some of the strategy associated with submitting the SRF is probably some discussion we should have. And by that I mean MassWorks is one type of application. If we're going to approach SRF, we probably want to again focus on an environmental benefit to the project and not so much an economic one. And you guys have a ton of, it's like 4 or 5 different reports that talk about, and some of those, by the way, funded by the state, that talk about some of the environmental impacts on the water systems that we're talking about. So you've got a lot of information already. That's going to be great just to be able to take that information and plug it into the application.
Just clarify SRFs
Sure.
for everybody, state revolving fund.
State revolving fund.
Just so
Yep.
everybody knows.
What's the
Yeah.
PEF?
A project evaluation form. It's an initial document that we submit to them. They take a look at that. And then I'll read off the process too. I've got to jot it down here. So we would submit, as I said, a project evaluation form with the intent of being listed on the state's PUP that basically is a list of projects that they want to fund. This information It's basically a contract entered into by the town for the loan, and hopefully again with some loan forgiveness, so there's some aspects associated with that which would have to go to town meeting as well.
Yeah, that brings up another issue that the state revolving funds have been replenished with ARPA money or some COVID area money.
Yeah.
And this money can be, I guess, granted for a bridge, but loaned for a water sewer project. But there was talk about forgiveness, not the 3 to 6% forgiveness that's traditional, but real forgiveness of maybe 50%. Has politically that moved anywhere in Massachusetts?
They look at each project on a project by project basis. The state lists communities, they tier communities, so it's the entire community, not just an environment, a justice community. So Westport's in a tier 1, and for example, Fall River, I think it's only 4 tiers, a tier 4 or 5. So
Tier 1 is the lowest, A,
yes, thank you.
You mean the lowest forgiveness?
the lowest in forgiveness.
Yeah.
Huh, okay.
Because it looks at the average annual household income compared to the state average. So they look at the most needy communities, and they're likely to get some of the forgiveness.
But I do know, and Bob's already referred to it, and that is, at the planning board, they've done some census block studying of income, and the North End has income that's lower than the state average.
Yeah.
So can we set, and that's where the project is gonna go. So can we argue that?
We have, and we will continue to, every single application we've made, every single conversation we've had with the agencies have put that census tract data in. We have a block that is 64% of the state median, so therefore, if you think in the bottom half of that median, there's some people that have very low incomes. And we've put both the maps and those documents in every single application. And to date, people have said, oh, that's too bad, but you're still a wealthy town.
Uh-huh.
We're trying to avoid making it a district and splitting from the Donley Club.
Well, I mean, a district is possible, but we're not there yet, because
Right.
it has to be self-financing.
District-
We need
the
2,000
district-
customers to do that.
A district would be, it has to be self-financing, and that
Yeah, I
would
know,
be
I
a
know.
real challenge.
Yep.
What about if, say, like on the water end, because I was talking to
Oh, and also, Mandy, that's an excellent point. We're both filing for money for the water and money for the sewer. And they come in different categories, and you can make a strong public health argument for the need for the water. So I didn't express myself properly, but these applications are really two-track applications. We're applying, we're chasing money for the water system, and even though they may end up in the same construction contract, it may be funded through two different sources. It will definitely be funded through many sources, one of which is our own money. No matter what, there's always gonna be a town share that we have to raise.
Okay. All right, good.
So again, I said PUB, it's IUP, the intended use plan is published in January, will be published, if we submitted, again, in August, assuming we get to that, meet that schedule, then the IUP, intended use plan, will be published in January 2024, and that puts you in a position to go to town meeting, and also in 2004 to vote for the revolving fund loan authorization. So to your point, though, I mean, what we're talking about is really sort of coming up with a strategy to submit the application in a way that best fits the town or helps the town. And, if there's a low income aspect to it, we want to describe that in the form. If there's environmental benefit, we want to focus on that. And if it's SRF, it goes through the DEP. I don't know how much they care about economic development, to be honest with you. So these are the things that we really, I'm not saying they don't, I shouldn't say that, but I mean, these are the things that we probably really want to strategize and think about how we submit that application best positions the town.
Right.
I get a question on that as far as the DEP goes. So one of the one of the DEP was instrumental in getting that piece of water main installed in Route 6 now. Some of the people that were in place at that time are still there. So they're fully aware of why that was put in. And I don't know, we possibly, that what happened there is still going on. And there's still responsible parties fund treating groundwater in that location. So I don't know if we can go back that way and try to get some funding out of them.
I think we've kind of sort of committed to turning over every rock and trying to find everything that we can find that might help fund some of the project, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, we can, we're trying to do the best we can without actually pointing out to people's houses and addresses and destroying their home value is a little bit of a shoestring.
Well, no, that's not what I'm talking about. So the water main was put in because of resolve.
Right.
And that was in the 80s.
Right.
It's not even in our town. So that's
Well, they tested every well, and I can remember the stories clearly, is because people could smell gas in their house. And they were very afraid of saying something until they found out there was a settlement and they received some money. Then a lot more people came forward, but still their house value.
And this thing with this thing that's going on with the Board of Health thing out there, people are frightened to death that, they're gonna have to be paying $60,000.
Well, I think that's initially how we started digging in, is people, because we knew people's wells were getting messed up, and they come to us on the side, but they didn't want the public to know where it was, so. Oh, we're gonna keep plugging along. All right, go ahead.
So,
We're on number 5 now. Right?
number 5, so one of the sort of action items, not in a critical path, I don't think, given everything else that's going on, this seems to be moving along, is the, Kleinfeld has been reaching out to Mass DOT, and they continue to work with Mass DOT to sort of establish what type of restoration requirements they're gonna need, and also the utility combination itself, and a state access permit, so road access permit. So, they sent them the plans. We did receive, I think, from Kleinfelder that they were at 75% review, or they were very close to coming to the end of their portion. But I don't think that that's going to prevent us from moving things along. The big 2 items are going to be the sewer pump station locations and dealing with this interbasin transfer act. But with that, if I could just get on the soapbox a little bit, there's a lot of other stuff that could happen at the same time. So we've got a really aggressive schedule here if we're looking for potential SRF funding for construction next year. And some of those things, from a policy standpoint, are gonna include sort of finalizing how the betterments are gonna be allocated. Is it gonna be just strictly bettered properties funding the project? Is there, and I know this is going to maybe go above this particular board's authorization, but how the project's going to be funded, because at some point going into these grants, we've got to develop some sort of financial model. This is how we're going to pay for it. In addition to that, I'm imagining you're going to want to have some sort of public outreach period, talk to the people who are going to be affected and ultimately better. And from a technical team standpoint, we've got to look at soon, like within the next month, I think, coming back with maybe an updated cost estimate, to give that to, because that's going to, those are inputs that are going to go into the betterment, obviously. But some of the things that need to be done. Yeah.
Betterments. Where do we stand, or actually where do you stand on betterments? Because I know there's, a quick and dirty way to do betterments, like, percentage of road frontage or something, feet of road frontage or something. But then in one of the Kleinfelder reports, I saw a very complicated, I think it was Kleinfelder, a very complicated formula for betterments.
Yep.
So are we going to go, like, keep it simple, stupid, or we are going to go to, a complex formula? Which way are we headed?
Complex formula.
We are headed that way? Okay.
They've got a really slick, works great. It's very equitable. I know Bob and Jim seen it. It's a really, really great betterment calculation. I was impressed by it, and I've done it myself. And it's a application that they've used successfully in other communities, which makes me feel good. Yeah.
And it's in the equity and that approach is that if you do it on any kind of frontage, let's say someone has a single house with a big long frontage, and that's the betterment thing. And someone has a very successful business or restaurant or something, and it just happens to have a shorter frontage. So, they get, the people that use a lot of water get small charges.
Yeah.
So what the approach they were taking is to convert everything to an equivalent household basis. So one home would use this amount of water, and then if you have a two-family, or if you have a lot that can be subdivided, you get 2 household equivalents. And in the business, we've converted the potential business demand into household equivalents, so that there's a real tie between the betterment charge and the actual amount of water that you would be consuming. So that's the approach they've landed on.
How about the idea of permitting? Was that included in there, or you?
Not much to say in terms of permitting, because that, again, the ITA is sort of the big thing here going on. Eventually, we are coming around to sort of local permitting, Conservation Commission. You know, we could talk to them, maybe it's not too early, even next couple months, to sort of introduce the project to them and just try to get everything lined up. But some of that stuff, typically the permitting boards like to know that you have all the other state and federal things in line before you come forward. Yeah.
All right. So to summarize, what's stopping us from being shovel-ready at this point? I know the pump house properties we've got to do. How about, do we need any easements? We got to worry about any easements down the road that would stop?
Everything is in the right of way. There's the first phase, the 2 pumping station locations, and we have to finalize negotiation with those owners.
Right, I'm just trying to summarize, because the stakeholders here, summarize what we've just gone through. Obviously, we're shooting the town meeting of next year. Next month's meeting at the end of June, we're gonna try to have better numbers for us to figure stuff out with that formula or whatnot.
Yeah, I think what might make sense for next meeting is to have established, there's a long list of stuff to do, but there's a couple of things that, this committee's not gonna have, we're gonna have to update you on, obviously, but you're not gonna have a direct, you're not, in terms of the ITA and some of the other stuff, but bringing that to you as we work through that from just a communication standpoint. But there are gonna be other things that this committee can help with. I think that might make sense to have like a couple of action item things on that you can start to schedule. Is this gonna be the forum where you wanna have some betterment discussions? If it is, then maybe we should, because it really, based on our schedule, we had some of those things taking place this summer. Again, the application for the SRF is going in August, and it'd be nice to be able to say that we've had public dialogue, public discussion. So some of those things this committee could help with.
That's fine, I just wanna make sure we're doing everything we can to keep the ball rolling, and, we've got a lot of stakeholders here.
So you suggested a couple of action items, maybe at the June meeting, and one might be betterments, and what would be another?
Betterment, how the betterments are being derived, and again, I know this is some of the actual percentages, but how that betterment is looking. If it's June, maybe we can talk to Kleinfeld about getting just a little bit of an update on the project estimate, because that's going to affect the betterments itself.
So this would be for 1A, the 1 mile of sewer?
Yeah.
And the betterments at this point, I think, are more the methodology that we use, right? Because we don't know what we're gonna be getting for grants, we don't know what we're gonna be getting for loans, and all that'll play into the actual amount.
No, I understand. But grants also require local funding, a percentage of local funding.
Yep.
And that's where the betterments, I would think, would kick in, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we only got a little seed money at town meeting, right? 30,000 or whatever it was it? I don't think
How
we
much?
got Was it 30? We only got a little bit for seed money for grants, correct?
Yes, for grants,
Yeah, we only got a small amount.
Okay,
Matching
well,
funds.
yeah.
All
But I
right.
know that ARPA money cannot be used
Right.
for local contribution.
Yep. All right, we're gonna move on to the new business. The Board of Health with the D night, Jerry and Manny wanted to talk on this? Board of Health stuff.
Could we probably go to the mandates before we talk about
Did I
that?
miss something? Manny?
Well, we have, permitting, but we went through that.
Oh, I'm sorry. What was it, the train stations?
I would like to ask a question on this past discussion.
Go ahead.
Roger, do you see any problems that are going to crop up with the Route 88, Route 6 interchange in terms of stormwater control, fixing up? Is that going to get in our way at all?
I don't think it would.
Okay.
I think it's far enough away, particularly from the 1A section of the work. That
Okay.
should be okay. Yeah.
Okay. All right, what did you want to hit, the mandates first?
Yeah, I mean, we're kind of talking about the stuff, and then we can get back to ours. We got, we got the legal and the D-night for the state.
All right, what do you, Maura, do you have an update on that?
Well, I put that on there because there are other issues that I think we should start talking about, one of which is there is a mandate from the state to have affordable housing near the new train stations. We're having a new train station come in Fall River, New Bedford, as you all know, and we're very close to the Fall River train station. So there's a requirement of something like 300 plus units that we're required to develop. This is something Jim White in your chair talks about.
No. There is a requirement that we have 50 acres of land zoned for as of right residential uses at a density of 15 units per acre. So the requirement is that we have that zoning put in place. The planning board is working with the consultant to look at those areas. We're planning to put those in the first phase where it makes sense along Route 6, and that we would, as part of the zoning that we're planning to bring to the town meeting in 2024, is the rezoning that would put this town in compliance with the adjacent community requirement.
So the STOD is right there along the line of the new sewer.
Yep.
And so would you rezone the STOD to this kind of housing, or part of the STOD?
We could. Rezoning is a process that takes place in the public.
Okay, no, this is a possibility, though.
It is a possibility.
Okay.
There are other possibilities, but it will, I think the proposal will be in the first, that first section of sewer. Right now, the STOD doesn't allow,
I know.
it doesn't allow multifamily housing. Matter of fact, neither does the business zone. We have a business zone that runs the whole length of this. The first phase sewer runs right through a business zone.
Yeah.
And then we have a very flexible business zone. But the lack of water and sewer is a constraint. Both the business zone and the STOD doesn't allow multifamily housing that we're required to have. So somewhere in either the business zone or the STOD, but somewhere in there, we will have the 50 acres zone.
Okay, on the 50 acres zoned, from a realistic point of view, is that 50 acres of usable, practical, or just 50 acres? You've got a lot of wetland up there.
I don't think it has to be in one chunk.
That's an interesting question. I don't know the answer to that, but
Yeah.
the requirement is 50.
It's gonna be within the zone, right?
It has to be within the
Well,
zone.
within
Yeah.
the zone, it's fine, but what I'm saying is we got a lot of wetland, and we can get a lot of
Yeah,
50 acres.
I think it wouldn't pass the straight face test if we said, okay, we've got this big wetland piece, that's gonna be
Right.
where you're gonna build a multifamily housing.
Right, that's why I'm asking the
It
question.
has to, there could be wetlands in this piece, but.
So it could
has
be
to
built
it has
now.
to be a buildable 50 acres.
Yeah, if it weren't for the lack of sewer and water, it could be built now, but,
It could be built now.
right, is what I think is probably meant.
Could this work to help us with the Mass Works grant? If we had a section, because we have some people with interest in some of the areas over there, because, I mean, this doesn't have to be in a 150-acre parcel.
No.
I mean, you got
As long as it's
somebody
within the
just
zone.
sent a letter in for one of their plazas that wants to put it on
Yep.
over the top. There's a couple of places like that. There's an old trucking terminal that they want to develop. like
Yep.
that. I mean, I think we might have a lot of them right in there that are ready to go. That could maybe help us with the Mass Works grant. I mean, if they're gonna mandate us to put this there, try to help us pay for it.
So Bob, I just did the math. 50 acres with 15 units per acre is 750 units.
Yeah.
That's not, I've never heard that number before.
Oh, it's been discussed many, many times in the planning board meeting.
500
Okay.
still in your bill.
It's a
At the
kind of
planning board.
shocking number, huh?
It is. I thought it was more like 300 or
No,
350.
no.
So some of it's gonna count, correct? Like
Some.
Brick Lane, some of it's gonna
Yeah.
count, as long as it's within that zone.
Okay.
Most of the Narrows is in that zone.
Now, there's also a number of towns that have gotten together and are taking the state to court on this, trying to say unreasonable, so I don't know where we stand on that.
They haven't they haven't forced it on us yet, correct? They just keep talking about it. We haven't got the official notice yet.
No.
No.
No,
It's just a discussion.
It is in discussion, and particularly, there's a lot of, particularly in the adjacent communities, you're absolutely right. Particularly the adjacent communities that don't have a station,
Yeah.
to have this apply to them
Yep.
is really tough.
It is ridiculous.
And it hits on the branch that goes into Bedford, it hits Rochester, it's even a much smaller community than we are, and they've got,
Right.
750 homes may be a big chunk of what exactly exists in the total number of homes in the town.
So that's another thing we gotta fight the state with, that and the,
And there is the other, I just wanted to comment in there.
Yeah, the legal aspect, that
right.
conservation law court suit decision that affects Cape Cod, but it also affects anybody with a TMDL, any community with a TMDL like us.
It affects us. We are in a, for the public watching and the audience, there is a draft regulation, DEP, particularly on the Cape, to protect groundwater, has been required to draft a regulation that said after a date of enforcement or adoption, there would be a 5-year period where every single homeowner that has a septic system would have to upgrade that to a denitrification system. So that's what the regulation is. The draft regulations apply to Cape Cod immediately. We are in a second tier because it isn't just the East Branch, the entire Westport River has a TMDL limited. There is a nitrogen limitation in the river, and we, as a town, either the individual homeowners or the town has an obligation to reduce the nitrogen contributions into the river until, period. And then we have to figure out what that means. But, so, then the state gives two options. The option 2 is what they, I think, are really driving for. So option 1 is every homeowner, you got 5 years to reach in your pocket for $35,000 and put in a denitrification system. Option 2 is the town adopts a watershed management plan, and the town develops a plan for meeting the goals and takes the burden off the individual homeowners, and collectively as a town, we adopt the obligation. So that obligation would include building sewers and it includes the kind of things that we're doing now. All new construction requires denitrification systems. We have a sunset provision on cesspools. So we're doing things, and that whole group of measures would allow us much more economically. If you look at, if you forget who pays for a minute, if you just think of driving around, our neighborhoods here in the north end of town, and count houses, and then multiply that by $35,000 and say, well, how big a number is that? It's a big number. It's over $100 million. And you think, well, hold it. If we sewered the whole sewer and watered the whole damn thing at $60 million, why have individuals try to pay $100 million. And, you know, so the idea that we would, and the town is creditworthy, the town can borrow money, the town can finance for 20 years, the town can do all things to soften what the actual cost is. It's gonna cost everybody more. It's not like, oh, there's some solution in which nobody has to pay. There's no solution in which nobody has to pay. But we could dramatically soften the blow by adopting a much more collective economic system. And if we think of it, the whole town being in it together, you know, there are large homes that are occupied by people who live here seasonally that probably could afford to pay more, you know. You know, why not throw on the bonding capacity, throw all of that potential revenue in the mix, so that while the benefit of having water and sewer may fall primarily on the residents of the north end of town, collectively we all share for that solution.
Okay. All right, caught up in that.
Okay.
All right, Manny, you wanna go into yours?
Well, I'd like to just talk a little bit more about that. The state denight regulation. I sat into a couple of those meetings with them, and because they keep calling these mandates, but I did think that I did hear in that meeting that whatever they decided, we're still gonna have to go to town meeting. So, I mean, it's really not, you know, I know everybody's up in arms, and there's been some response letters. I mean, we have a gentleman from Board of Health here that sent a response letter up to the DEP, Dartmouth, and we have the state Board of Health sent up response letters to this regulation. So, I mean, I do agree with you that we're doing everything we should. I don't believe we have a nitrogen impaired designation. We were considered nitrogen sensitive area. A lot of the stuff with the regulations that the Board of Health has mandated on us, I believe are kind of the same issues that the state's, I think what the state was throwing was a threat, kind of to make other communities do what Westport's already doing. I mean, we have that water management plan. I mean, the mandate from our Board of Health didn't follow that plan. So I think we gotta look at all of that, you know, and that goes into this, you know, with the letters we got for the cesspools on Route 6. I mean, if we got a plan, let's follow it. Let's, you know, I mean, the Board of Health just went into town meeting and changed a town bylaw with a regulation.
Right.
Their regulation, I mean, I know they have power, but the power's for public health threat. I mean, a septic denitrification regulation on septic new construction is not a public health threat, when we already had a more stringent regulation than the state. We're 60,000 square feet, 330 gallons for 60,000. The state's an acre, 440 gallons a day. I mean, that's what treats the nitrogen. You know, when it gets to your well 100 feet away, it's not there anymore. It's a natural cycle of nitrogen. I just think they're kind of, you know, you got people with some of these cesspools that, in our master plan, in the integrated water plan, it says right in it, the geology in the Route 6 area. I mean, take that into consideration. Don't just blanket us with a regulation. I mean, some of these letters that they sent out, I mean, they're not all fact. You know, I mean, they're not done on science. It's kind of, it's a little ridiculous. And they drew a cartoon, and there's a lot of people that are afraid right now.
So Manny, you've really gone up to the first item.
Yeah, kind of
under
jumped
new
out of it.
business. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, we can add on to that. I mean, we got some of that paperwork.
Okay.
I'd like to say
Yeah, Jerry.
a little more too, because I also had asked for this to be put on, but for kind of a different reason. I just feel, well, first of all, let me mention, you know, the Board of Health and Bob alluded to it earlier about $35,000 and so forth. I just put 2 of those systems in the last couple of years, and they slightly exceeded 30,000. That's why I have holes in my shoes right now. I have a feeling that when this really does kick in a big way, and it gets mandated and so forth, I have a feeling the price of that is going to go up a lot with supply and demand. And there are only so many engineers that can plan this stuff, and so that's a big issue. I have asked to be put on here primarily to start communicating with the Board of Health locally and have them attend a meeting and start talking about this in the Board of Health and trying to produce some reasonable rules on how they may proceed. And it's going to be very tricky, in my opinion, because this sewer and water line doesn't just all drop in the ground at the same time and everybody's all hooked up. It's going to be over a period of time. Well, the mandate of this nitrate issue is also going to take time, but I would hate to see our Board of Health pressure people in this district that's going to be served to replace their system when 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, you're going to have a sewer going by there and the water, and it would negate the whole idea of them having to put a new system. So that's not for us to decide, but the Board of Health has a lot to say about that. And I just think we ought to keep pushing for them to actually discuss this, hold public hearings as needed, and so forth, so that people have input, the public knows what's going on, and so forth. So my only point is, I think we ought to get them involved with us early.
Should we officially invite the Board of Health to come to a meeting, maybe the June meeting?
Yeah, we had said at the last meeting we would have them come. I just think anytime soon.
Okay.
Well,
Okay.
we have a member here right now. I don't know if you'd like to come up and speak a little bit.
I'm just observing now, if that's okay.
Okay.
But an official invitation may be coming, Phil.
Yeah, I mean, I was I attended just to understand what the issues are, so I could take it back and
Well,
talk to the
that's
board
what I'm talking
about
about.
it, so that we could,
And
have a productive conversation, I guess.
we don't have enough time in this meeting to
Oh,
go
no.
over
No,
all the
it's
issues anyway.
next meeting.
But there is, I think in preparation of that next meeting, we get those letters, response letters to the state's D-Night regulation out there. And Mr. Weinberg did a wonderful response to the DEP. And, we got one from the Mass Board of Health that I think if we review it and you look at what they say, I mean, our Board of Health is doing that to our seniors and people up in this north end right now. I mean, we got a regulation, in the paperwork they sent out, they call it the Town of Westport septic regulation. It's the Town of Board of Health regulation. This wasn't voted in town meeting, wasn't discussed in that. So this, just to go on to the new construction part of it, new construction, Title V, in our master, in our integrated water plan, we said, let's look at all the systems prior to '95 before Title V. Because the state says 440 gallons is treated in an acre. Our regulation said 330 gallons is treated in an acre. And the nitrogen, the natural flow of nitrogen to the river, from the geology up here in the north end, it's not getting to the river. So all of these systems are not public health threats. And we need to come up with some kind of plan moving forward with the sewer in the areas that are gonna have septic and continue to have septic. If we don't need a denitrification system there, if it's, another thing, wetlands, we said how much wetlands we have up in the north end. The wetlands are denitrification ecosystems. And, there's the Bread and Cheese Brook. You'll look at some of the testing where it goes in the Hemlock gutter. When it gets out to 177, it drops because it goes through that ecosystem. And that's what we got in Westport. That's why our river is the way it is today. So I just think we got some people that there's one on Route 6 where, so the regulations stated when you're gonna do a septic repair, that if you didn't expand, you didn't have to do a D9. So these people, they buy the house, they go get a septic design, nope, you gotta test the water. So they test the well water. The well water comes up less than, in between the state regulations, 10 parts per milliliter. The Board of Health created a more stringent regulation, 5 parts per milliliter. Now that's drinking water standard. So now they test the sewage because the well is too close to the septic. So they can't meet that. Well, you're not gonna ever meet that in sewage until it gets a distance of past 100 feet. So, but this house right there, and his septic was 65,000, because now he did a D-night, now he's right on Route 6, the well's right on Route 6, being contaminated from Route 6, he's gotta do a retaining wall, he's gotta do all this other stuff, and then nothing said about the well that he can't drink the water, and the water main's 500 feet away. So those are the people that I'm concerned about.
All right, so help me out. We're now the Water and Sewer Commission. We're trying to get water and sewer on Route 6. So how does this tie to us? Because we want to get the water and sewer. You can certainly bring that up as reasons we need water and sewer, but we're not changing Board of Health regulations.
Well, I think we should change the Board of Health.
Well, we're not water and sewer. We're infrastructure.
Well, no, I think legally the Board of
Help me
Health
out, just-
created a mandate that's.
That's the only thing that stops the state.
I don't think it's unenforceable, and if you look at the letters
Right.
to the state
Right.
that was sent from our Board of Health, from the state Board of Health, and from the neighboring town of Dartmouth's Board of Health, those regulations are totally against it. You know, like they keep saying this is for, you know, they got the power over public health, and that's how they can do this mandate.
Right.
Well, why don't you put it before town meeting with engineers to design what's supposed to be done, instead of just saying, we're gonna blanket the town with this,
All right.
and make people pay to install something that's not gonna have any effect.
Go ahead, Mark.
So, I'm a veteran of the Board of Health, as you know, and I know that the Board of Health gets great powers from Mass General Law, Chapter 111, I think. And so, you know, they do get power directly from the state that has nothing to do with the Board of Selectmen.
Well, one of the letters from the Mass Board of Health
Yeah.
stated that if the state did this denitrification regulation, it would be one of the first ones that ever got overturned.
Huh.
Because
Well, I have to review that letter. I have not reviewed it yet.
Yeah.
I'd like to go back to Steve's question, how does it affect us?
Yes.
I think it affects us in a big way, because I think that unless the Board of Health comes up with reasonable, common sense discussion and rules for that area that we're talking about, I don't think we're gonna get town support. And we need town support if we're gonna try to get money. So that's why, how I think it. I don't know if you're getting a connection, but even somebody in the south end that may not be directly affected by the sewer line, if they think that their mother or father or just a person, a stranger, is being very unfairly treated by this because they're being required to install a $40,000 system, and 2 years from now the sewer's going to be going by their house, I don't think they're going to take it too kindly.
I just know that their bylaws is what's helping us from the state pushing that at us now.
the integrated water plan
Yeah.
shows all the contaminated wells up there.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of them.
And there's some that isn't.
We need to do everything we can do to extend the water main.
Right. I think we all agree, that, I'm not gonna argue that, that's our purpose.
Yeah, that's
But
why
getting
we're
into Board of Health regulations and having them come in and whatnot, I just wanna understand where we're going with it, because we're trying to get the infrastructure in here to address
Well,
what's going
Well, I
on.
think that's Manny's point, is that, you know, it's integration, it's like you said earlier, we have this integrated water plan, that presents a plan, you know, this ties into that, so we need to make sure that the other is tied into that as well, so that we're working in concert with each other across departments and not.
Understood, but we don't have funds or anything, I mean, hopefully this would come soon, but we've gotta get the funds allocated to move forward. Okay, so is that the consensus, everybody wants to invite the Board of Health to the next meeting? Is that what everybody's thinking?
Next
It's gonna
meeting.
be-
That's my suggestion.
Okay, that's what the board wants, we'll move it forward. Okay, it's a democracy, so. Okay, let's move on to the next item on the agenda.
So,
Local news.
so the local newspapers, I think, you know, part of the reason why this committee is founded really is to get the word out to our community about our efforts on water and sewer in the Route 6 corridor. And I'm willing to write an article occasionally about our efforts, you know, based upon, you know, basically these meetings that we have. But, you know, our chair, Steve, says that he's been in contact with the Shoreline's local newsman named Ted Hayes. And so I have called Ted and left a voicemail.
Yeah, I asked them after the
So
election.
maybe it would be better if he were to write it rather than me, because it would be more objective, independent, whatever. But I'll see, you know, whether
Yeah,
he's willing to do
I
it.
sent the emails to Bob Dale and Maury May, told him to get a hold of Ted Hayes. He wanted to do a story. I said, hold off till after the election. I said,
Yeah, I did not call Ted at that point.
That's fine.
Yeah.
But let's move it forward. Let's get the word out, because we need to
Okay.
get the ball rolling.
Yep. Because there's a lot of stuff we discussed tonight that should be out there.
Yeah.
If somebody's not watching TV, but maybe he's reading the Shorelines or the Chronicle or whatever.
Exactly, and once you
Yep.
get the word out, there might be some follow-ups, and we absolutely need to get the word
Yep.
out. Hopefully, find some money along the way. Okay, anything else on that? All right, we don't have anything within 48 hours, do we? Jim, nothing new
Nothing.
this week?
No,
We'll try to get you home in a reasonable hour. Any public input? Anybody have anything to say? Tony? You know the routine, you gotta go to the mic, identify yourself, please, for the folks at home.
Tony Vieira, Middlesway, routine, 8 Kelly Avenue. I think you guys are doing a great job, and you got some tough issues. Bob, we're lucky to have you. You've done a yeoman's work here in the last year, from where we started some of these meetings. From the business-to-business standpoint, and people that live on Route 6 or abut Route 6, there's some questions, and that's one of the reasons I came tonight, and I just want to share them with you. You might have considered them, whatever, but one is the stormwater. Initially, when we talked early on in design, people talked about coordinating issues with the state as the state redesigned Route 6. We were trying to coordinate that with what we were doing with water and sewer. So some of the people that abut Route 6 are still face some serious stormwater issues. And Steve, Johnson Street and Route 6,
Yeah.
we get a heavy rain, it's a mess. And right next to it's right at Chase Brook. So,
And Westport Flooring usually comes to it.
yeah, so it's that kind of situation. I don't know, Bob, previous experience, do they tie in another pipe for stormwater? Does the state get involved because it's a state highway? That's one of the issues that if we're really serious about doing something with the river, we've got to address the stormwater. And the new construction has to address the stormwater. The other piece that people are talking about is on the latest plans for Route 6, I've seen some of them, they've talked to us a little bit about here, but are they going to be taking the utilities and burying them at the same time? I've been saying that because I thought that's what they said initially. Will that affect the timing of what we're doing with their plans? It's just kind of coordinating, and as Manny had spoke about Board of Health, the same situation. You know, I almost think if one was willing to participate on your board, it'd be great, because I think you get some input from the board perspective. They can go back and share it with the other members of their board.
Yeah.
But I think you're heading in the right direction. I mean, we've been at this deal for 20, 30 years. Steve was playing Little League Baseball when it started, I think. So, you know, we're getting there. And I don't think we would have done it without the people sitting around the table here. So thank you. Appreciate it.
We are trying that, like I say, that's usually brought up every meeting, is the stormwater, especially Rob from Westport Flooring. It's not gonna help you if you're in the wetlands, but like Johnson Street area is flooded, does need to be upgraded. So that's phase 2. Have they done anything with that yet, or we gotta track down? He's talking, do you know where Johnson Street is? It's halfway along in the middle of phase 2.
Right next to Brandon Chase
Yeah,
Road.
it gets flooded out.
Well, I know Mass DOT's has been
They
thinking
were
about
supposed to look
advancing
at
the
it, but I-
project. Well, if they advance it, I don't know if it goes up that far, but if they advance
does.
some of that, so if it does, then
Yeah.
they will definitely look at any stormwater issues that they typically do.
We need to stay on that too, thank you for reminding me, Tony. That Johnson Street, it was bad, they were supposed to upgrade it, and I don't know if it was ever done. So we gotta stay on
It's
that.
just kind of the coordinating piece with
Go
the
ahead.
state.
Yeah.
Yeah. You have to identify yourself both for the record and the folks at home. I don't know if I made it clear, but this is being recorded.
Joseph Rio, I'm the proud homeowner of a house my grandfather built in 1950 in the area you're talking about. I think you guys are doing a great job, and you're on the ball. I agree with Tony, and That goes to you too, Tony, even though you're on the other side. For the record, I do know something, a little something about sewers, if you ever need me.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right.
Oh, and
Do you know?
my neighbors asked me.
How do you spell his last name?
Because they all seem to use the same word, scream, if they can.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, yeah, you had mentioned that to me the other day. We do have the business,
RUX,
we usually
okay.
have one more member, I don't know if you've come to the meetings before, we usually have the MO bus, but he was here, but he had an emergency. So we have the businesses along Route 6 too. Was there anything gonna add? So
I'm good.
if we expand the committee, we have at least one, and if any Board of Health wanna go on. All right, anything more on public input? Everybody understands what's going on. Next meeting, we're trying to get some better idea on numbers. The next meeting is June 22nd. At this point, unless we get something exciting, we'll probably take July and August off and probably have a forum toward the fall. So did you get that? Probably a forum toward the fall. We hope to take July and August off because everybody's at picnics and vacations and it's tougher to get a forum. All right? Anything else to add before we wrap it up? Okay, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Dale. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Catino. All in favor? Aye. That's unanimous. Thank you. And you're gonna get sworn in, so you can make a difference as